Today I'm going to be sharing book recommendations for the summer based on your vacation plans. I was thinking about doing a summer book recommendations video and if I wanted to do it based on a certain genre or separate it in some sort of way. And I thought going based on vacation plans would be fun because if you have things planned for your summer, whether it is a trip to the beach or a mountain vacation or just a staycation at home, if you have a long weekend that you'll be stuck in the house looking for a great book to read, that can really set the mood for the type of book you're looking for. So I'm going to be going based on whatever plans you have for the summer, and maybe you have multiple plans, and I'll give you recommendations for each venue. First up is book recommendations for the beach, one of the most common places to go in the summer. And I feel like it's really easy to recommend beach reads because this is a big part of the market. There are so many beach reads. There are so many books set at the beach. There are so many books that would just read great at the beach. But I tried to narrow it down to a reasonable amount. So I have 5 book recommendations for the beach. First up is Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins. This came out a couple years ago. It is an island thriller and I had so much fun with this one. The story follows 6 people who go visit an island together and then someone ends up dead and then chaos ensues. So it's the perfect thing to read out at the water, especially if you're on an island. It's fast paced, it's a little silly, just a good thing to read out in the sun. Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez is for if you want to feel a little bit sad on the beach, but also be kicking your feet and giggling watching 2 people fall in love. This is technically the 3rd book in a series, but it's a romance series and each series just follows a different couple, so you could definitely read this as a standalone. I love all the books in this series. Part of Your World, Yours Truly, and then Just for the Summer were all 5-star reads for me, so you could pick up any of them. I recommend all of them, but this one is set at a lake, so it kind of gives a little bit of a beachy vibe. The story follows these 2 characters who both believe that they are cursed. They actually meet talking about this online. They both have this thing that happens where they'll date people, and then as soon as they break up with those people, that person then goes on to like find the one right after. So they can't find the one, but they keep being the last one before the one for people. And so they bond over this experience. They end up spending a summer together, but they live in different places. It's just the summer that they have together. They don't think it'll be anything serious. They think maybe we can break our curse together. If we date each other, then maybe the next person we'll find will be the one for each of us. But then they catch feelings for each other along the way. There are some real life obstacles holding them apart from one another. There's some sad emotional things that happen in this book, but the romance is great and I highly recommend, like I said, all these books, but especially this one for the beach. If you're looking for something light and whimsical, I would recommend Sometime in Summer by Katrina Leno. I absolutely love Katrina Leno's books. She just has such a wonderful quality about her writing. This is a middle grade story and I do not read middle grade like at all, but I really enjoyed this book and I think any adult could enjoy it as well. You're following a girl who is turning 12 or 13 and she's going through a rough time. Her parents are getting divorced. Her mom is selling the family bookstore that she loves, and you know, she's a young girl turning 13. What can be more difficult than that? And so her mom ends up taking her on this vacation for the summer where they're going to stay in this seaside town in New England. And the story follows her summer there and just the magical experience that she has there, meeting some new friends. There's this comet that's coming in that hasn't been there for a long time. It's a coming of age story and it's just really beautiful. It would be wonderful to read on the beach. And then another lake book, The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I think I ended up giving this book a 2-star when I initially read it, but I feel like it's just lived in my mind as this kind of iconic, ridiculous type of story. This is a story about this woman who's staying at this lake and she spends a lot of her time watching her neighbors, snooping on them. It's this married couple who she's very intrigued by, and she ends up saving the wife from drowning, and then very shortly after the wife goes missing and she thinks that there's something suspicious going on. And this book takes some wild turns. It's not necessarily a beach, it's a lake, but it has beachy vibes because of that, and it's just so silly that I feel like it's the type of read that would be nice on the beach. And then a recent read of mine that I think would be a nice little beach read is The River Has Roots. This is a fantasy novella that's following these 2 sisters who live right on the edge of the fairylands. And this is a really short story, so I don't want to say too much about it, but it's mostly about their sisterly relationship, and there's a lot of magic infused in the story. It has a very cool magic system. And while it's not set at a beach, it's a river, there's water, and the water is important to the story. My next set of recommendations is for good books to read if you are on a road trip this summer. First up, I'm going to say James by Percival Everett. This book is fantastic. It's one of my favorite books that I read this year. This is a retelling of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, but it's told from a different character's perspective, and it is just so wonderful. It's so well written. It's so interesting. The way it flips the story, the way it gives characters more agency in the story. If you're unfamiliar with the story of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, that's totally fine. You could go into this without fully being refreshed on that story. I would recommend just like a quick little search on the internet, read a little summary of what happens, and then I think you'll appreciate this a little bit more. I've read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, but 20 years ago or something. So it was good to get a refresher of that before jumping into this book. In the story, you're following Jim, who is an enslaved man who is trying to run away to avoid being sold, and Huck Finn, who is a boy who is faking his own death and trying to run away. They end up joining forces and running away down the Mississippi River. So following the long spanning journey that these characters go on together kind of emulates the road trip experience, and all in all, it's just a fantastic book, so highly recommend. If you want a very specific road trip book that follows a road trip, I would recommend Perfect Days by Rafael Montes. This is a story that is kind of similar to You by Carolyn Kepnes, or if you've seen the show on Netflix, in that you are following a young man who is a medical student who becomes obsessed with this woman, and he decides to kidnap her and take her on the road with him through Brazil. This is a twisted story, and it's also pretty short, so it's definitely one you could complete in the duration of your road trip as long as you've got at least a couple hours. When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy is a recent 5-star favorite of mine. This book begins when this woman Jess is having a really difficult night. Her night is off to a bad start. And then she gets home and there's kind of this chaos unfurling. There's this child who's running away from something. She's trying to kind of protect the child. She doesn't know what to do with him. And then this creature comes attacking them, presumably a werewolf-like creature. And she decides to take the child and hit the road and run away from the monster. This book takes some wild turns. It's wildly unique. So the synopsis does not reveal much about it, and I try to be careful when talking about it to not say too much about it either. But if you want to follow characters going on a road trip-ish journey while you're on your road trip, this one is very fun and I would highly recommend it. And those were all a little bit heavy, so I tried to pick something light and romantic. And for that, I would say People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This is one of my favorite Emily Henry books. It's about these lifelong friends who usually go on a vacation together each year, but then something happens that disrupts their vacation plans and disrupts their friendship, and so they take quite a long hiatus. For 2 years, they don't speak. But then when the book begins, you are following them deciding to take one final trip together, and of course, they fall in love along the way. This story generally just has a lot of great vacation energy because it gives flashbacks to their previous vacations, all the different types of vacations they took, and also this vacation they're taking now. So I think you could read this no matter what your vacation plans are, but it would also be fun on a road trip. Now, if you are not a beach person and you want to go be in the mountains for the summer, if you plan on being in a cabin, I have 3 book recommendations for you. The first is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. This story is set in the heat of Florida back in the 70s, and it is set at a home for young, unwed mothers. Your main character is, I think, 15 when she gets pregnant and gets sent away to live at this house for the summer. And throughout the story, you're following the girls as they are forming connections with one another as they're each going through this monumental time in their life, and also facing some difficult challenges just in the nature of how they're being cared for in that home, but also there's some witchcraft that comes into play. They encounter some external forces and they start to use witchcraft to try to fight it. Something about this book just feels like it'd be a good cabin read for me because of how it's very confined to the home these girls are in. So it's very much, in one setting. It's not set in the woods, it's set in the heat of Florida. But I think if you're, stuck in a cabin and following these characters who are stuck in a house, it's also just a great book. I think you'd have a good time with it. If you're looking for something kind of moody, kind of eerie, maybe something that can make you feel a little bit scared while you're in the cabin reading in the dark, I would recommend The Man Made of Smoke by Alex North. In this story, you're following this guy named Dan who had a close encounter with a serial killer when he was younger, and that has sort of haunted him through his entire life. Now, in the present day, his dad has now gone missing back home at his small island community, and so Dan is going back home to this community to try to piece together what happened to his dad, and along the way, he's finding that there may be some connections to the serial killer who was never caught. Since it is set on an island, you may think, wouldn't that be a good beach read? But I don't think so. I think it'd be a better cabin read because this book did creep me out while I was reading it. It just has such an eeriness to it, and the island also kind of gives like this woodsy feel to it. It's a crime mystery that just has a lot of atmosphere oozing through it. The tone is so consistent throughout the story of this character who's just haunted by this thing. You also get his dad's point of view in the story, and they're both carrying their own regrets about their relationship throughout their life as well, and it was just a really great time. And then I feel like a locked room mystery is always a good pick for being in a cabin. So my latest favorite locked room mystery that I've read is You Are Fatally Invited by Andy Pliego. In the story, a reclusive author is offering an exclusive writing retreat to several mystery thriller writers. They all get invited out to this island to stay at the author's house for the event, but it turns out there are some more nefarious plans at play. Once people start dying one by one, they are left to figure out who is the killer, why, and will they make it out of this alive. This book has multiple POVs that kind of throws you around the story, just giving you that same feeling of chaos that your characters are feeling as they're in this wild experience. And there's this element to the story where they're being presented with these games and these challenges. So I liked how the game element came into the story. Each night they play a different game, and that kind of sets up something for them to solve or a challenge for them to go through, while also knowing that the stakes are life or death. Next up, I have a couple recommendations for if you are taking an international trip this summer. And for book recommendations for international travel, I was thinking a couple different avenues. One of the ways I was thinking is maybe you're just looking for a really long book to read on a really long flight. So I looked back on my shelves for my really long books and looked back at ones that I have really enjoyed. And the one I have to recommend is Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. This story follows a man and his young son, Gaspar, and the story kicks off with Gaspar's mother dying. After that, the father is sent fleeing to protect his son because his wife's family is part of this secret society, a cult that is called the Order, and the Order is seeking eternal life, and they really want Gaspar, and they will not stop until they get him. So that's how the story kicks off. It ends up spanning a lot. It has a lot of pages. It'll take you on quite the journey, but it was a really great time. I really enjoyed the character depiction in this. I got very connected to their journey in the book. It goes in a lot of different directions, and I think it'll hold your attention on a super long flight. The other direction I was thinking is books where the characters go international, and for that, the first book I thought of is We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. This is the same author as the Thursday Murder Club series, but this is the start of a brand new series, so you don't need to read those books to pick this one up. In the story, our main characters are Steve and Amy, and Steve is Amy's father-in-law, who is a retired cop, and he is just living his quiet, calm little life in his little village. He likes to keep his brain sharp by solving petty crime like money being stolen from a cash register or someone's animal going missing. But his life gets upended when Amy is on her latest adventure. She works in private security, and at her latest job, she is on an island protecting a best-selling author. But then things get deadly. There's a dead body, there's a bag of money, and Amy looks to be at the center of the crime, and she has to go on the run. So her and Steve pair up to try to get her out of the situation and get down to the bottom of the mystery of what's going on. And they end up traveling the world to do it. So I think it'd be a fun fit to read if you're on some international travels as well. And then another book that I thought might be a good fit is Sister Snake by Amanda Lee Coe. This is a fiction novel that follows these two sisters, but their relationship is particularly unique because they both started their lives as snakes, a green snake and a white snake. And they met as snakes, they became friends, calling each other sisters, and then they found a way to turn into humans, and they have this long spanning life together. When the story kicks off, they're like 1,000 years into their journey together. One is living in New York, one is living in Singapore, and they have very opposite lifestyles. One is reckless and one is very type A, and the reckless one starts getting herself into some terrible situations, so the other one convinces her to move with her to Singapore so she can keep a closer eye on her, and the story follows their relationship as they're going through that experience together, but it also includes a lot of flashbacks to all their journeys together through history, all the different places that they've been, the different shenanigans they've gotten into. So it's a very broad spanning story through time and place, which I think would be a good fit for international travel as well. And then then lastly, I wanted to recommend a couple of books for if you're planning a staycation. And a staycation book could be anything. You know, I feel like you usually want to pick up a book you're highly anticipating on a staycation so you can knock it out over the weekend. So that's going to get really personal. I don't know what you want to pick up on your staycation, but I thought about a couple books that might be particularly enjoyable during a staycation. The first one is The Wishing Pool and Other Stories by Tananarive Due. This is an anthology of stories that span from horror stories to more sci-fi stories, and it just has a little bit of everything in it. I think Tananarive Due is such a talented writer. She does so well across genres, which is hard to find. And I think that might be nice if you're having a staycation to just have some short little stories. Maybe you're staying with people on a staycation, so you don't want to get fully sucked into a book, but you want to be able to pick it up sometimes, read a little short story, read another one at night. Maybe you want variety. You want to be reading a lot of different things, but you don't have the room to pack a bunch of books. And so I think this could accomplish that. And also, I just think it's a really great collection, and I look for any chance to recommend it that I can. And another book that I thought might be good for a staycation, particularly if you are staying with your family, is Sign Here by Claudia Lux. This is a story that is split between Earth and Hell. You're following this character who works in Hell, and he gets people to sign over their souls, and he's getting really close to a promotion if he can just get one more member of this particular family on Earth to sign the contract. And so he's focusing on that family, and then on Earth you're also following that family as they are on a lake vacation together, all staying in the same house. The story jumps between perspectives, and you just get this depiction of this family and what they're going through and all their, you know, messy family connections and challenges that they go through. And then this guy who works in Hell who is desperately trying to get them to sell over their soul. It's a very unique book. It is funny, it is engaging, and I think if you're stuck in a house with your family, you would find it particularly enjoyable. So that is it for all of my recommendations. Hopefully you found a great book to pick up this summer. Let me know down in the comments below if you have any additional recommendations for any of the vacation plans. That way too, if people are looking for the recommendations and maybe they happen to have already read all the books in their certain category, they can get some more ideas down below. And let me know if I convinced you to pick any of them up. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye!